Welcome to Expat Hoops, the show where we talk to basketball players who have played professionally outside of the U.S. Today, former guest host, and current Icelandic pro basketball player Fallyn Stephens joins us to talk to former Saint Bonaventure star player and current assistant coach at Providence, Jessica Jenkins. She helped get the Bonnies to the Sweet 16 in 2012, leading the A10 in three-pointers made. She ended her career as the all-time A10 leader in three-pointers made as well. She went on to play in Iceland professionally for a season, England for 2 seasons, and Australia for a year before making her way back stateside to begin her coaching career. This is her 5th season at Providence. Jess, welcome to Expat Hoops.
Thanks for joining us. So you wound up going to Saint Bonaventure. What was the choice like at that point in time, and why did you choose Saint Bonaventure?
I get asked this question a lot. Saint Bonaventure is actually my only scholarship offer out of high school. So I had an offer to a Division I school like early in the end of my sophomore year, early in my junior year. And I went on a visit and didn't love it, kind of wasn't sure. And they said, look, you're not ready to make a decision. We're going to put that offer out to somebody else too. And the other girl immediately took it. So there was like a stretch where I didn't have an offer and I didn't know what I was going to do at the next level. And then one of my last AAU tournaments, couple of coaches from Bonaventure saw me, and that process moved pretty quickly. So it was kind of my only offer. I liked it on my visit, but I was not completely in love with it on my visit.
You liked it, but you didn't like it.
I liked it, but I would have been open to visiting other places and all of that, but I didn't want to pay for college. So it worked out, obviously, very, very well for me, but it was unique because it was my only choice really at the time.
Yeah, and it's not like it's a bad program either. I mean, St. Bonaventure's a mid-high D1 program when you were there, and you took them to pretty great heights.
Yeah, it was. It ended up being a really good choice and probably exactly what I needed. Just when you're from where Fallyn and I are from in Ohio, and you're looking at different schools, you probably have stuff in mind that are nothing like where you're from. And I a couple things on my list of what I wanted. Bonaventure met 0 of the 3 at the time, but it ended up being all right. The MAC was really good when I was in high school. Bowling Green had just gone to a Sweet 16, and that was kind of where I wanted to play, was somewhere in the MAC, I think, just because it was local as well. And I knew a little bit about the Atlantic 10 with Dayton and Xavier being in it and being in Ohio, but I didn't really know that much about Bonaventure or many of the other schools.
And so you ended up having a pretty good experience there, all said. I mean, your career, you had some pretty good highlights while you were there, and spent a lot of your time there playing pretty well, as did the rest of your team. I believe you went undefeated 1 year in the A10 as well, your Sweet 16 year that was 2012.
Yeah, so we went undefeated in the regular season and then lost in the conference tournament final to Dayton. But we went undefeated. The league was so good that year as well. There's a couple people still playing in the league, couple people playing overseas. Temple was in the league that year, so the league was really good. We had one really, really close game that year where we won at the buzzer. Then other than that, we kind of handled business until the conference final. But
yeah, this was right in the middle. This was right in the middle of all that realignment where all the teams were moving about. So, I know things changed, and now 2 of us in the chat are A10 alumni, even though technically they were in the CAA. We were there. We both went to George Mason. So we saw the team there, and when they went to the Final Four in 2006 on the men's side, and their recent run of success a few seasons ago. So
yeah, cool. I like it.
At a certain point in time during your college career, did you envision that that you would continue playing, and when was that for you? When was that moment that you thought to yourself, okay, I'm going to be able to continue playing professionally?
Probably before my senior year. Had a couple of conversations with one of our assistant coaches at the time about it and kind of what I wanted to do after, if I thought I wanted to keep playing, and kind of what detail I'd thought about it. It wasn't until before my senior year that I decided that's what I wanted to do if I had the chance to. I didn't know what I wanted to do after college anyway. So once I decided I wanted to keep playing, I didn't really I knew that's what I wanted to do going into my senior year, but I didn't really start to look at it or think about it until our season was over that year, as far as how to get an agent and all of that. But that's, I again did not know what I wanted to do after school if I wasn't playing. So,
and that's really kind of exactly where I wanted to go with the question next is, so what was your process like in terms of finding an agent? Like you said, you didn't really know other than the fact that you wanted to do it. So what mechanically kind of took place for you to actually wind up going overseas?
yes. So I actually had a pretty bad experience at first hiring an agent. I had a couple different agents reach out. Obviously, I had success as a senior, and we played in some big games, and there were some other really good players in the league. So I ended up signing with an agent who had signed one of the other top players in our league at the same time. It was basically kind of got sold as she was a point guard, I was a two guard, would love to send us somewhere together. And just ended up not getting any really good looks. One of our other friends on the guy side had signed with him as well. And I ended up having to make a change kind of at the last minute after a couple months, and just went with a local guy in Ohio that one of my friends had. I went from a pretty big agency who had a lot of connections and represented a lot of people, to where I was nowhere near the top player on his roster, to a smaller agency where I was a little bit of a bigger name in comparison, and he maybe didn't have as many contacts, but was really connected in places that I could play that would be good for me. So it was stressful for a while because I decided that that's what I wanted to do, and then there was a long period just before college where I didn't know if I was going to be able to, or I didn't know if an opportunity was going to come up. But Iceland came kind of at the last minute, so it was nerve-wracking. And I'd never had to fire anybody before, so that was kind of fun.
So you end up in Iceland. You play for Keflavik for a season. Tell us about your experience there, and then maybe Fallyn can compare and contrast her experience as she's in her first year in Iceland as well.
Yeah, so basketball-wise, we were really good. We had the best young player who was maybe 15 or 16 at the time, ended up coming over here and went to Canisius to play, had a really good career there. So, and she plays in the top league in England now. So we had the best young kid, could score it, could do all of that. And then we had the best vet as well. She doesn't play anymore over there, but we had two really good players. I didn't have to do that much for us. We won the cup, we won the finals, we won the regular season. But I didn't have to put up crazy numbers because as a team, we were really good, where you're looking at the teams who are at the bottom of the league, and the Americans having to average 40 just to make it a game. So basketball wise, we were really good. It was kind of easy, I guess, because there wasn't a ton of pressure because we were winning. I didn't have to score it a lot. I didn't have to be perfect every game, which was probably a good thing for my first year. I did not take advantage like Fallyn is of exploring and doing all of that. I did a couple of the touristy things. I got to go Blue Lagoon anytime I wanted. So that I did was pretty cool, but I didn't take full advantage of being there because it was my first year.
That ain't bad.
No, I mean,
I'd like to be able to go to Blue Lagoon whenever I want.
Yeah, that was definitely a perk. I just didn't explore that much as I wish I would have, but I didn't adjust that well at the very beginning. It was the first time really I'd been, I'm from a kind of a small town. I'd never been out of Ohio, and then I went to a small school in literally the middle of nowhere, New York. So it was the first time. Iceland is pretty similar as far as it's not I wasn't in a huge city or anything, but it's just completely different with the dark and the weather and the language and all of that. So I started to just do some more exploring towards the end of the year, but I did not. Fallyn is crushing it with that.
I'm also lucky because for 2 months we were shut down because of COVID. So
That's
I
fair.
wasn't doing anything at all. So that's really the main reason why I got to see a lot of what I have been able to see. But yeah, I hear you on the darkness. And I mean, you were in a big city compared to where I am.
Yes.
I think that my town is like maybe 2,000 people, maybe. And but yeah, you were basically like 30 minutes outside of Reykjavik, kind of, right?
yeah. So Keflavik
then
is like
I
right
was
where the
too,
airport
yeah.
is. So
Yeah.
it's like there is a lot of stuff there.
Mhm.
It's just not the capital, which is like the only big city.
The only thing, the only thing that has
The
anything.
only thing. So I also wasn't like a fan of driving. I mean, we still drive on the same side of the road, but I would never driven a stick shift before. They just like gave me the car and they were like, "Oh yeah, by the way, good luck." It's like, okay, can somebody teach me, please?
They luckily they give me an automatic, or else I mean I know how to drive a stick shift, but I would not be comfortable driving it here at all.
Yeah, I had, but one of the girls on my team was like, "Okay, I got you.
Oh.
I'll help you." Luckily, or else
Well,
I
and the
would have
gas
literally not
prices-
gone anywhere.
Yeah, the gas prices are so expensive. It's like $80 to fill up my Toyota Corolla. So it's really like traveling is so expensive just with that.
I know. I feel you.
Yeah, there's not much other way to travel on the island unless you take a bus trip somewhere or something like that. There are no trains or anything. And
No.
in terms of towns, like you could drive 45 minutes in any direction and you won't see much of anything. Literally nothing. Just rocks and moss, and that's the occasional horse maybe if you're lucky.
Yeah. And you can like, if you're going to a small town, they aren't going to speak English. They aren't, the likelihood of walking into like a restaurant or something and being able to talk in English is so much lower than like being in, I could order in English anywhere I went. In Keflavik, if you wind up in a random town, you're a little out of luck.
I'm lucky because my town has like, it's one of like the stops on like the Golden Circle, or if you're going around the Ring Road for like there's a hot spring hike that you can take. And so there's a lot of touristy stuff like in English around. So here I'm lucky there are more, English is everywhere basically, but we also practice in another town that's even smaller, and the English is not that great over there. And that's where I coach little kids, and they're not great. They don't speak great English to me, but it's cute because they try.
I know. They always like, even our like young girls who were like in high school or middle school that would come train with us when I was there would like huddle up and like figure out how to say something and then come talk to me. It's so cute. So adorable, especially the young ones.
Yes, I can tell that like sometimes I drive because some of the girls in my team are so young, they're able to play for us and then this younger team. So I drive them to practice because that's who I help coach sometimes. And in the car, 2 of them are really shy, but one's pretty good at English, and so she'll talk to me, but the other 2 just like add in like a yes or a no every like couple sentences.
Yeah.
And culturally, it's very European, so I don't feel like either of you went through any sort of big cultural shock. I know that language barriers tend to be something, but in my experience traveling over there, I know I didn't experience much of that either. I spent about a week over there. And it wasn't too unfamiliar. Obviously, the climate can be a bit rough. In the winter, it's dark and it's either sunny and bitter cold or pouring rain and slightly warm. From my experience, what do you think are some things that, in your experience over there, that were a bit more out there for you, and other things that felt more like at home?
So the food was pretty normal. I did try all the like Icelandic delicacies.
Oh, did you try the hard Carl?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah, I literally
thoughts?
tried everything. No, thank you. I'm all set. All set.
Did you get it down? I guess that's my big question.
ish.
Ish. Okay,
Ish.
that's better than most, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't even believe Anthony Bourdain actually got it down when he tried it many years
Ish.
ago.
Yeah. No. The other the guys on like our men's team and then the other pro team in Keflavik, they like made me try everything basically. So
Feat of strength. That's what that is to them, really.
yeah, I just said okay, why not? It's like one of the last nights. So I tried all of that, but the food was pretty normal. That was like not really any different. There wasn't really anything like other than the like, long road trips where there's literally nothing, and yeah, I drive like 3.5 hours. That's as far as we had to go, and there was like nothing. That was the difference, just like the climate, or like when Fallyn and I are driving to Columbus to work out. That's one thing when you're driving like an hour in Iceland to work out. There's like mountains and stuff, and like it just looks completely different. There really wasn't anything that was a huge shock to me. The weather was probably, or the dark was probably the biggest thing, the toughest thing. Other than that, everything's pretty much the same.
Well, switching into your second and I guess third seasons,
Mm-hmm.
you wind up going over to Britain, playing next. What was the process like in terms of after you played your first season, deciding where you wanted to go? And I'm hoping that that's probably although it's a European country as well, that it's obviously another English speaking country. Was that an easy transition for you?
Yeah, that was really easy. I actually went over there because a girl who had played at Bonaventure before me, like we didn't overlap or anything, 3 or 4 years before me, she ended up having British citizenship, so she like played in the Olympics for him. She was kind of starting, or the head person at a club over there. She was still playing at the time, so I kind of went over there because of her, because I would have known somebody. They ended up paying for me to get my master's while I was over there, so I had to go to school, but I also have my master's now because of it. So that was kind of like the trade-off. I got like a stipend, but it was not like an actual paycheck or anything. But they still took care of most of the stuff. It was a 2-year program, so that's why I ended up going back for the second year. The second year I played over there was the first year of like their pro league, the WBBL. It was just kind of, I don't know, a level below that before that year. So I got to play in that for the first year that they had it, which was interesting because they're figuring out how to run a pro league for the first time. That was much more like we were talking about in Iceland. You've got kids that are like going to in high school, and you've got like people who are just kind of doing it for fun that are older players on your team, where in England it was a bit more serious. Like there was a couple more imports. You could only have one American, but you could have more people from other countries in Europe. So it was the level was a bit higher across the board there. And it was such an easy transition because they all speak English. And I was in Cardiff, which is actually in Wales, the only team that wasn't in England over there, but that's a big city. I spent quite a bit of time in London when we had time off. So one of my best friends played for another club over there. So that was nice because I got to see her a lot. So that was super easy.
You know, I said off the top you played in England, and of course I knew Cardiff was in Wales. And I got to say, I'm going to leave it in because I have some British friends that are going to be really annoyed at me doing that. And I kind of want to troll them. So I'm just going to leave it and see if anybody notices who they listen.
Pretty much every time when people ask me where I play, I just say England anyways.
Yeah. I mean, it's fairly
because then you have to say Wales, but
mm-hmm.
the league's basically in England.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's basically an English league. So
I just go with England. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's actually, I think that's the first time we've heard of that kind of arrangement where, I mean, your experience there was that you essentially got a master's out of it. You were almost kind of, I don't student athlete, but like
basically back on scholarship.
Right. And I think that's the first time I think we've kind of heard of that, where, I mean, we've had people before talk about where I had to finish up some of my coursework, whether it's for undergrad or for they were finishing a master's. But I think that's the first time we've heard somebody that said that I basically got my master's overseas.
Yeah. Like I said, the league was pretty new when I was over there, and the club was brand new as far as trying to field like a high level women's team. So they had pretty much no funds. That was what they could offer. Because I'm not sure I would have done it, because that is a bit of a unique situation if I didn't know people already in the club or know somebody. But I mean, I'll take it. Ended up working out.
Yeah.
Pretty well. So, and it's a little bit relevant. I got my master's in strength and conditioning, which has nothing to do with my undergrad. But I get to use it a little bit here. So
What's your undergrad degree?
Marketing.
Ah, okay.
Like I said, had no idea. So something in business, we'll just sign up for that and spend all my time in the gym. Literally all my time in the gym in college. So.
And it worked out for you. I mean, I feel like you're using it.
Yeah, I am.
So from there, you went to Australia. I don't believe anybody on the show yet has played in any Australian professional leagues. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
So that was my bucket list place that I wanted to play. I didn't care about the level. I didn't care where in Australia. That was just kind of, I want to play in Australia before I'm done. So I actually played back to back. We finished our season in England, and then like literally 3 days after we lost in the playoffs in my second season there, I went to Australia. So I didn't miss any games, but I had like no preseason in Australia. Australia basketball is really good, and they have probably like the second, maybe third best professional league. So the league I played in is like opposite of that. So they get a couple people who play in their top league, but the level's not super high. They have like one American on every team. But I said, I'll go wherever in Australia. It's just where I want to play. And I had been hurt the first part of that second season in England. So I didn't play like a full season. It wasn't like I was playing for 12 months straight or anything like that. It was a pretty short league in Australia. It was like 3 months. It was really just fun, to be honest. Like I said, the level was okay. Our team was okay. They had just gotten, the team I went and played for had just gotten promoted to like the top level of that league. So we were okay. But it was just fun. Like I definitely took advantage in Australia like I didn't in Iceland.
I was just about to ask.
Yes, very much. It did end up being, yeah, it was fun. Like we were okay. The level was fine. I just had a good time in Australia.
When you went there, did you know that this was basically going to be your last stop?
No. So that's kind of a cool story. About halfway through that season, I wasn't sure it had become not quite as fun to play. I think the injury had something to do with that, because I did miss some time, and it was the first time I'd ever really been hurt. So I think that had something to do with it, and become more of like something I had to do rather than something I was loving to do. As far as actually playing, like I still love to train, and I still loved to work out on my own, but just like practices weren't as fun anymore and all of that. So I was kind of thinking like, all right, what should I be doing next? What should I be looking at? But about halfway through my season in Australia, my boss right now, who I played for in college, his wife has a son who actually lives in Australia, like 40 minutes from where I was playing. She came over to visit him, and the job opened at Bonaventure while she was there. And he basically said, don't come back without Jess. So
Wow.
I had that job offer to be an assistant at Saint Bonaventure on the table. And I also had a tryout with the Boomers in Melbourne, who play in the top league in Australia, which would have been a legit basketball contract over there. And I kind of had to like make a decision with both of those things on the table. So I decided to take the job because I wanted to work for Coach Crowley. as my first job, and I wasn't sure if I didn't take it now when the next chance would be. There's not a ton of staff turnover normally on his staff, so kind of had to take it, which was probably the right decision. I still went to the tryout. I just said, don't tell me if I would have gotten signed. I don't want to know. I'll go, I'll play, I'll run around. I don't want to know.
So you'll never know.
So I'll never know.
All right. Well, that's okay. I mean, turned out fine again, I think.
Again, it worked out fine. And I think if I really wanted to keep playing, I would have said no to the coaching job, but there was a part of me who was ready to be done playing and ready to do something else. So it was good timing.
Yeah, there have been
Well,
a few
imagine-
people on the show that have talked about injuries and how that affected their career and whether they wanted to hang it up or whether they wanted to continue and try to fight through it and all that stuff. And everybody's a little bit different in that regard, I think.
Yeah, I got hurt at the end of that first season in England. Ended up coming back through no fault of the club's, through only my own fault, way too early, because I wanted to play in the playoffs and basically whatever. Tried all summer to play through it. I had an avulsion fracture in my ankle, so like rolled my ankle. It actually went both ways, and I like ripped a piece of the bone out of the side that people don't normally do that on. My ankle is just constantly swollen all summer. So I finally made the decision to have it operated on, which means I was in like an actual cast for 6 weeks. And then I got the cast off like 4 days before I went back. So I was in a walking boot. Most of the time over there, I did all my rehab over there. One of my teammates was actually a physical therapist, so recovery went pretty well. But I just didn't bounce back that well from it.
So one of the things I think that, all right, so you kind of talked about, Australia was like a bucket list place for you, and you talked about that you got to see a lot of the things that you did and probably worked out really well in terms of checked a lot of things off. So what did you do in Australia that made your time worth it there? Like, what were some of the things that you got to go see that you wanted to go see? What was your experience like in terms of getting to see the country?
Yep. So I played like in a small town, kind of in the country, like 40 minutes from Melbourne, but I had a car, super easy to get around. They do drive on the other side of the road, and it was still a stick shift. So that was, that took a while, but I managed. But it was easy to get around. So I spent a lot of time in Melbourne, just kind of hanging out and exploring. I went to Sydney for a long weekend, like 3 or 4 days or something, and just kind of did, like, to be honest, in Sydney, like did the touristy stuff, like went to Bondi Beach and all of that. Didn't explore too much up there. And then my coach took me, him and his wife were like awesome. They just had, their kids had basically just moved out of the house, so they kind of were like, you can just come, like we'll just take you on like our vacations and we'll just take you around. So we did like the Great Ocean Road there and stayed. So I got to see all that, like the Seven Apostles and that kind of touristy stuff. There was a tournament. I didn't get to go to Cairns. There was like a tournament or like a fundraiser charity thing that I got invited to, but I'd already taken the job here, so I missed out on that one. But I got to see 2 different places, and one of our teammates had, I'm not going to think of like the town it's in or anything, but had a house kind of like up in the mountains in really south in Victoria. So we got to spend a couple weekends there with like a group of people and do hiking and be on the beach and all that stuff. It was cold when I was there. I needed to buy a winter jacket, but I
You were there in the
up.
winter, which would be our summer.
Yes. Just can't get away from the cold weather.
Well, now you're in Rhode Island, so
Still can't get away.
Still can't get away
from
no.
the cold weather.
No.
Still can't.
On your the coaching staff, you have a lot of more heavy Saint Bonaventure ties and all that stuff. Do you intend to move along with the staff for a good while? I mean, is that something that you want to stick with?
Yeah, so we were actually all teammates. So I
Hmm.
played with our other two assistant coaches. I am the baby on staff, so I do get picked on still, but I can dish it out a little bit now. So we were all teammates for at least a year, which is kind of cool. It definitely made like the transition a little bit easier. I obviously made the move to Providence. I was at Bonaventure for 7 months. Like I didn't go through any of the summer recruiting that you would normally do as a coach, because Coach Crowley said I'll come if I can finish the season in Australia. So I got back at the end of August, basically like walked right into preseason, and then we were really good. They had a lot of seniors. I didn't have to do that much as an assistant. And then he took the job at Providence in May and was like, "Are you coming?" And I was like, "Well, sure." My first felt like my first season as an assistant was in the Big East, which probably was a challenge. I really like working for him, and I really like the people I work for. I haven't thought that much about like kind of what I want to do next. When that happens, I want to be here for a while. I do like Providence. I know that there are people on our staff that want to be head coaches eventually. I don't know how quick that will happen. We've got a good thing going, so we'll stick with it for a little bit.
What's something you learned while being an assistant coach that if you'd have known as you were a player might have made your experience a little bit different?
How much time goes into scouting reports. Because as an assistant, we basically have to know everything that's going to happen, even if there's like such a slim chance of it happening. Like we played yesterday, game went into overtime. Like there's such a slim chance of knowing what somebody's going to need to run as a sideline out of bounds with 6 seconds left. You really don't need to know that as a player, right? Like I could say that to our kids, or somebody could have said that to me when I was a player, but I'm not really remembering that. Like I'll probably remember what we walked through. I'm not like, I always knew the scout, but there's so much detail and so much time that goes into doing that. I probably would have asked more questions or paid more attention as a player.
Respected that the assistant coaches do put in that much more time than what you don't realize.
Yeah, there's so much stuff behind the scenes. And I pretty much asked to shoot with our assistant coaches constantly, and they just always came whenever. Like you're just always on. You just always have to be ready to like work out or do all of that, which because the assistants that I played for never said no to like coming to work out, didn't matter how early or how late. That's something that I try to do as well.
So that was my next question. Is there something that you brought to your coaching as a player?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I learned from like the assistants that were on staff when I was there at Bonaventure. That's one thing that I've really, like there's times where somebody will text me and it'll be like late at night, or they want to go, nobody really wants to go early in the morning except for me, but or where they will text me and I'm like, oh, I just sat down on the couch, but okay. Like I'll always go because that's what our assistants always did for me. So that's one thing I'm glad I had good examples that way for that. But there's as a player, I very much just like outworked people physically. I just spend more time in the gym. I would watch more film than anybody, like where as a coach, it's harder. There's nothing like as physical to outwork people. Like it's all, you have to work a little bit smarter as a coach, where as a player, I can just spend more time doing it, where like now you have to execute stuff more, or you have to take something and turn it into what you do. Like I can watch all the film I want, but if I can't turn it into offensively something that we do, or defensively something that we do as a program, then it doesn't matter how much film I watch. So there's a little bit, you have to like adapt a little bit more. That's something I struggled with a lot early as a coach.
since you have that relationship with everybody that you either had previously played for or played with, what if anything were there like that they kind of would pull you aside because, okay, this is going to be different now that you're a coach as opposed to a player, that I know you kind of gave that, and that might have been it, but was there anything that you just kind of were like, okay, this is something that you were able to get from them, that they were like, this is going to be a difference and this is how we do things, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, so the one change we had on staff when we went from Bonaventure to here at Providence, one of the assistants stayed behind at Bonaventure, and then we brought back somebody that I had played with, who was like a really good recruiter, had done it at the Big East level, probably learned a lot right away. Like I had to become a good recruiter right away. She kind of really helped me with that. That was a huge adjustment. But one thing that was, that's maybe like this year, I'm okay at it, is like I've always, because I played for Coach Crowley, now working for him, like I still feel like he's my coach and not a coworker. So I'll just do whatever he says. Like, especially early, I just do whatever he says and be like, okay, that's obviously right. I didn't want to bring anything to him. I didn't want to bring like offensive stuff. I really didn't want to bring recruiting stuff, like anything, because I was like, well, he obviously knows everything, right? Like he's the head coach. Like, where now I'm a little bit more comfortable taking ideas to him or being more of like an assistant coach rather than feeling like I'm still a player, which I still felt like for the first couple of years, I think.
And so, I mean, I guess essentially also with your recruiting pitch, that's also got to be nice to, as you're trying to get better at that, be able to rely on the fact that you played for this person, that all the people that are on staff, even though it's a different school, it's pretty much the same. Instead of come to Saint Bonaventure, it's come to Providence, and this is day in, day out what we do.
Yeah, it's really unique the way that our staff is set up, because I'm not sure that there's any other staff in the country that has the dynamic that we do. Like they might have gone there or played, like you might bring back player and put them on staff, but for us to have all been teammates, and Coach Edwards, who's our associate head coach, the oldest one, her class really like started the turnaround at Bonaventure, and then it kind of like came full circle with our class, and that's such a unique thing. And recruits always want to come, not always, but most of the time recruits are like, I want to go somewhere that feels like a family. I want to go somewhere, and that's like the buzzword. That's what people want, right? Is a family atmosphere or whatever. We're literally teammates. Like it's not just a word. We're not just saying that to say it. Like literally we were teammates. And that's how it still is. It's easy when a recruit comes to campus for them to feel that too, I think, for the most part, that dynamic. So it definitely helps in recruiting for sure. I think kids that want that, kids that like basketball, that sounds crazy to say, but like kids that really, really like basketball, they find that interesting. Where you get on a phone call with somebody, you realize really quickly if like basketball is just something that they do because they don't really care about some of the stuff, and that's normally one of them. But kids who really care find that interesting.
In your experience so far, has there been anybody that you've coached that has wanted to go pro overseas?
So when we got here, we had a couple of international kids on the roster who wanted to and did, but it's a little bit easier when you're from Italy or from Serbia. We haven't in the past had an American that wanted to. We do now on the team now. We've got some kids who that's something that they want to do, but pretty much the kids that we inherited when we got here, that wasn't something that they wanted. But now it's something when you're talking to kids in a recruit, they want to go play overseas. They want to play a little bit longer. They want to play professionally. So it's something that we have on our roster now.
That's actually an interesting point you brought up. When you were a player, I know you said that it took some time to decide if being overseas is something you wanted to do. Do you feel like that's something that's really changed? That there are more kids in America that are playing basketball at a high level that say, I can do this and I should attempt to do this overseas?
Yeah, I think it's something that they're more, a lot of kids have trainers now, or their trainers played overseas or whatever. It's something that you're around a little bit more. It's something that you hear about a little bit more. I'm not sure that I knew anybody when I was in middle school or high school that played overseas, like actually knew. Whereas now I feel like if you're in the basketball community, your AAU coach, like somebody that comes to practice and helps, probably played overseas. It's something that you're just around more. I also didn't, I had one scholarship offer going into college. I wasn't like, yo, I'm going to be good enough to play overseas. Like that wasn't on my radar. Whereas now we're recruiting kids to play in the Big East. And that's something that they're hearing in recruiting pitches anyways. Like, you know, we have kids go overseas. We have kids play professionally in the league, whatever. So it's something that's in their minds now.
Thank you for watching this episode of Expat Hoops. We have a lot more videos that you can watch at this point in time. You can find one recommended for you right here. We also have a lot on our channel that you can go back and watch whatever episode you want at this point in time. You can even watch the Expat Extras. That's stuff where you can find stuff that is unique. It's something you won't find on our normal audio podcast. It's something different. We've got lots of great stories there. You're going to want to check that out. Throwing us a subscribe down somewhere here somewhere, or even the little subscribe button that lets you know that you're subscribed to Expat Hoops. It means that you're going to be notified when something is new, something's different. You're going to want to do it. It's just what are you waiting for? Just do it.